We are following some breaking news here coming in out of northern Israel. Now, this is a post that was just made moments ago by the Israel War Room as they say all eyes are on northern Israel, which is under constant rocket attack by Hezbollah terrorists. There has been some videos circulating throughout the morning, seeing people, including children, running for cover as the alarms are sounding. Want to talk about this and all the latest details here out of the Middle East. So let's bring in Dr. Asaf Romarowski, the Executive Director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning and good to be here.
All right, so first off, I do want to talk about the situation over in northern Israel, because we talk a lot about what's going on in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, but all eyes, as we mentioned, are on the north right now as those sirens are constantly going.
Yes, you're right to point this out. I mean, it's been happening for weeks now. The Hezbollah does not want to be left out of the picture. I mean, Hezbollah also wants to join the party. It's been part of the party. It's important to frame that all of this is part of the larger Iranian axis. And there's no doubt that we've seen a escalation of Hezbollah activities, especially following the drone attacks on Israel directly, but all along. Hezbollah has been funded directly by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Ever since the president was killed in the helicopter crash, again, there is a constant reminder that Hezbollah has not forgotten who the true enemies of the area are, and by extension, they are following their direct patrons, that is the Iranians. And all of this, really into the larger contextual environment has been coordinated with Hezbollah since October 7th. And that's part of what needs to be also highlighted, that notwithstanding the need or the demands to end the war in Gaza, the war is not only limited to the south. The war is working on several fronts. I would even argue 3 fronts at a minimum when you're talking about the southern part when it comes to the Houthis, the northern part when it comes to Hezbollah, and of course the south when it comes to Gaza and Hamas. And so this is all part of the battlefront that Israel is facing. And of course, the goal by Hezbollah and by the Houthis is to try to make the Israelis flex their muscles as much as possible in order to try to see if they can actually handle bandwidth-wise all these attacks. And what we've seen coming in from Lebanon, of course, has been drone attacks, other kind of attacks. The Israelis have demanded, and correctly so, going back to the UN resolution, that the Hezbollah push back to behind the Litani River. They keep on edging closer and closer to the border, and there has been, as we know correctly, there are displaced Israelis from the north and from the south. We're talking about 100,000 people who are displaced inside of Israel. All of that is part of the consequences of the situation, and it's only putting more pressure to try on Israeli society, on the government. But of course, all eyes are on Gaza, coming out of the United States. And so in the meantime, Hezbollah feels that the pressure is not on them, so they feel they can continuously attack Israel.
I want to ask about an Israeli drone that was downed over Lebanon. This was yesterday, I believe. How significant of a move is that? Do we know a lot of details at this point, or are we still trying to piece together exactly what happened?
We're still trying to gather all the information, but what is clear to us is that in contrast to Hamas, Hezbollah they have long-range missile capability, and they have guidance long-range missile capabilities, which makes them a danger in that regard. And they are continuously trying to target Israeli radar systems, as we know, and they know where their locations are in the northern part of Israel. This is all part of the master plan. That's been a concern for the Israelis. The larger concern has been for Israel at large, is getting hit with all kind of missiles coming in, sponsored by the Iranians, as we saw with the attacks that came in from Iran. But Hezbollah is continuing to do that. Hezbollah does not have nuclear capability yet. That's always been the concern, but they definitely have conventional capability, and they're using it, and they're able to surgically attack significant targets inside of Israel.
Let's talk a little bit about this proposed ceasefire deal that we did hear about from President Biden. He, of course, says that it was proposed by Israel. Still a lot of questions here because we know that Israel's National Security Minister, Ben-Gvir, is essentially rejecting that truce deal and has threatened to, quote, dismantle the government. Could that actually stop the deal overall from going through?
There are a lot of rumors about this deal altogether. I mean, there are a lot of speculations. I mean, it's really, from my vantage point, it's hard to believe that, the comment that was made out of the administration saying that Hezbollah is devastated and that's enough and Israel should take the win, so to speak, and move on. That does not coincide with the objectives of the war itself. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have made all along comments arguing basically that they don't support anything short of the full dismantlement, and they want to see more aggressive actions when it comes to Gaza at large. It's important to note, of course, that they represent the far right within Netanyahu's own cabinet. They themselves are not part of the Israeli war cabinet, but they are part of the Netanyahu coalition. So, of course, they're trying to put pressure on Netanyahu to act in a certain fashion. That being said, I think that there are many problems with this deal, and it's very hard for me to believe that the deal was fully accepted by the Israelis. Even the announcement of the deal being on a Friday night, where many Israelis, many religious Israelis are observing the Sabbath. The timing was a little bit odd all around, and the fact that, of course, you had the involvement of the Qataris. All of this gives Hamas a seat at the table, and also Hezbollah, which, of course, is problematic. The fact that you would actually elevate both of these Islamist terrorist organizations to actually legitimate actors around any kind of negotiating table represents a great deal of problems. Following the statement, you did see comments coming out of ministers of the Israeli Knesset reiterating the fact, as well as Netanyahu himself, saying that the objectives remain the full dismantlement of Hamas. Anything short of that is considered to be a failure for the Israelis. Again, while at the same time trying to bring as many hostages as they can home. And you're seeing already now that the Israeli intel is discovering more and more bodies of hostages as they continue the Gaza offensive in those strategic areas. It's important to also note, not to forget, that there's about at least 4 to 5 battalions of Hamas in the Rafah area. That's thousands of actual active combatants that Israel has to deal with.
And I want to take you out to this post here from Twitter, X. It is from Isaac Herzog there, the president of Israel, who said, I want to thank President Biden for his speech and his ongoing efforts to bring about the release of all the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. In this context, I told Prime Minister that I will give him and the government my full support for a deal. So my question for you here is, does it appear that Netanyahu and Biden are really on the same page here? Not necessarily Isaac Herzog, but Netanyahu and Biden.
Well, I think that Netanyahu, these U.S.-Israel relations are critical. Netanyahu understands and needs U.S. support. The objectives are, the larger issues as far as the objective of the war are similar. The tactics are not always exactly the same, as well as the different strategies, given the objectives that the Israelis have on the ground and given the ongoing threats that are coming into Israel. That being said, it's also important to note that in tandem, it was already released today that Netanyahu has been invited to speak in Congress. And so I think that there is, Netanyahu definitely wants to be invited to the United States. He wants to give his viewpoint of what has been happening since October 7th to Congress. So we understand the larger strategic issues when it comes to U.S.-Israel relations. I think that the difficulty has been as far as the immediacy or the need to end the war based on an American time schedule versus an Israeli time schedule. And I think there's also a lot of internal electoral politics that are playing into the war itself before we go into high gear when it comes to election season here in the States, as far as how this war is playing into the constituency of the Democratic Party that that President Biden is trying to appease, make happy along the way with all of these moves.
And I do want to talk a little bit more about his invite to address Congress there. The prime minister writing, quote, "I am very moved to have the privilege of representing Israel before both houses of Congress and to present the truth about our just war against those who seek to destroy us to the representatives of the American people and the entire world." You kind of touched on this already, but do you believe that Netanyahu will actually go and address Congress?
I think he will. I think that, the invitation, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth waffling between the Speaker of the House, between Mike Johnson and Chuck Schumer. As we noted a few weeks ago, Schumer came out with a very critical statement of Benjamin Netanyahu and actually meddling with the Israeli electorate, saying that Netanyahu needs to be replaced. The invitation came from both Johnson and Schumer. So I think the fact that you have a bipartisan effort was clear here. Johnson also mentioned early on that if Schumer did not sign on to it, he would still go along and make the invitation. This was kerfuffle that we saw back in 2015 when we saw a similar situation during the Obama years. The difference is, of course, as a bipartisan effort, which I think the message that Netanyahu would like to argue for is the fact that U.S.-Israeli support is a bipartisan initiative and should be as such, given the fact that Israel's war is America's war. And I think that those are the kind of messages he's going to try to put out there. That being said, we know there are problems within the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that represent a great deal of animosity towards Israel. But I think Netanyahu is going to try to craft a bipartisan speech in order to ensure a larger U.S.-Israeli support going forward.
All right, Dr. Asaf Romarowski, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us here and break down some of the latest headlines out of the Middle East. Is there anything else that you want to add here about any of this before I let you go?
No, there's going to be a lot of developments going forward, but I appreciate the time as always.
All right, thank you again. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.